No doubt, Moon Knight Season 1 was a roaring success, keeping fans on edge until we thought we'll burst with anticipation of every next scene. But boy, did they leave some pretty heavy cliffhangers. Talk about Jake Lockley, the killer. Who would have thought? But what about Layla? What's going to happen to her now? And the boys, Mark and Steven, are they really free from Khonshu? Do you want answers? Stay with me. First up, will there be a Season 2 of Moon Knight? Every fan of Moon Knight is dying to hear a release date for Season 2 of this mind-blowing series. Netflix has not yet confirmed whether or not Moon Knight will be returning for a second season, but given the positive reception to the first season, it seems likely that the series will be renewed. Moon Knight Season 1 premiered on March 30, 2022, and after 6 unforgettable episodes, it concluded on May 4th, 2022. And ever since, fans have been anticipating the release date of a new season. So will there be a Season 2 of Moon Knight? We can't say for sure. There has been no hint on that. But speaking about it, Oscar Isaac, the star of Moon Knight that played all 3 roles, stated that there will not be a second season of the series. That's just such a downer. What with all the intense cliffhangers that Season 1 ended with, but Isaac did say that if there were a way for the superhero journey to continue, he'd be happy to be a part of it. But as we keep anticipating a hopeful release of Season 2, let's talk about these burning questions you really want to be answered in Season 2. Let's start with the most obvious one. Will Jake Lockley be against Moon Knight? And what about Layla? Will she continue to be Tower Reed's avatar? Will she remain married to Mark or Steven? Oh, here's one more. Will she see Jake as her husband? Stay with me to find out what fans say about these mind-blowing questions. Let's jump right into it. So who actually killed Layla's dad? When Mark was accused of killing Layla's dad, he claimed he did not, but fans are wondering if a certain violent alter of his was responsible for the act. Remember, Mark primarily uses 3 other identities to gain information from different social circles. So after Layla's dad died, Mark met Layla and went ahead to marry her, but he failed to mention that he was at the scene of her father's death. That's a bit suspicious, don't you agree? Layla finds out about this when Arthur Harrow accused Mark of being responsible for the death of her dad and was really hurt. However, Mark denied it and said it wasn't what it looked like, but is it not? Fans are wondering if Mark's third alter, Jake Lockley, was responsible for the act. All through the season, a couple of scenes hint at the possible presence of another alter that is not Steven and that Mark was aware of. The teases all seem to portray Jake as sinister rather than gentle. So is Mark lying about killing Layla's dad, or did his third alter take over his body and commit the act? I guess we'll just have to wait and see if Season 2 will drop soon and clear out doubts. Next, is Harrow really dead? Episode 6 was pretty intense, with the bloody battle that ensued between Harrow, the bad guy, and Mark, Steven, and Layla, the good guys. It seemed like Harrow was going to win until Mark suddenly blacks out. Harrow is seen to be in a psychiatric hospital. An unseen figure carries him out to a waiting limo with Khonshu inside. Khonshu had earlier asked Mark, Steven, to kill Harrow, but he refused. So here's where things get spicy. In the limo, Khonshu proudly announces that Mark is more messed up than he thought, and as if to drive his point home, he introduces his new friend that turns out to be Mark's third alter, Jake Lockley. Jake promptly shoots and kills Harrow. However, fans have been wondering if the villain really died in Season 1 of the movie. I bet some of you are already placing bets that Harrow will be back if there ever is Season 2. So did Harrow really die in Season 1? We don't know for sure, but when asked, Jeremy Slater, the head writer for the series, said that he wrote that scene with the death of Harrow in mind. So according to him, Harrow ends with Season 1. But he also said that that might just change, depending on who the next writer will be if the series is continued. So there you have it. Keep your fingers crossed. You might just win that bet. And now, will Jake Lockley be against Moon Knight? All through the season, we see little glimpses, or should I say teasers, that hint at the presence of Mark's second alter apart from Steven. In different instances, we see Jake featuring in Mark and Steven's life, usually in an unscrupulous or violent manner. Like that time in Episode 1, that Steven goes on a steakhouse date he didn't remember planning. Or in Episode 6, after Mark saves Steven, and there was still another sarcophagus shaking violently. Jeremy Slater sure did a good job of keeping viewers wondering about the mystery guy. And then finally, as if the entire season had no space for him, Jake Lockley appears in the post-credits scene of the final episode of Season 1, where Khonshu introduces him as his friend, and Jake went on to shoot Harrow. Talk about ruthless. Apparently, Jake shares Khonshu's twisted idea of vengeful killing. When Khonshu asks Mark to kill Arthur, Mark refuses and instead demands his freedom from Khonshu. Khonshu agrees and frees Mark, or Steven, except it turns out he had something else up his sleeve. So now the big question is this: will Jake become Khonshu's new avatar? Seeing that Jake was ready to do Khonshu's deadly biddings, does this mean he will be up against Mark that is all about saving the world? Another burning question begging for an answer is whether Mark, or Steven, is genuinely free from Khonshu, especially since his third altar is obviously still in partnership with the Moon God. With his enemies closing in on all sides, it seems as though Jake Lockley may be the only one who can save Moon Knight from himself. However, given the state of mind that Moon Knight is currently in, it's possible that Jake may become an enemy himself. But then, I guess we just have to wait and find out in a possible new season. And finally, what happens to Layla? In a moment of bravery, Layla accepts to become Tawa Reed's avatar, so that she can save the world alongside Marc and Khonshu. Layla's new avatar position came with the superhero suit, complete with wings and swords. Fans are saying she slew, and I couldn't agree anymore. I guess it doesn't hurt to fight hot. Layla looked completely breathtaking in her superhero outfit. But moving on, after the intense battle in episode 6, Layla works with Steven to trap Amit inside Harrow's body, in a way to ensure the god doesn't come lurking around anytime soon. However, just like Marc and Steven, Layla is shocked to learn of Jake Lockley, Marc's other altar. So what's next for Layla? Now that Amit has been defeated and Harrow is supposedly dead, will Layla continue to be Tawa Reed's avatar? Another troubling question is, will Layla consider the sinister Jake as her husband too, or will she see him as the threat he seems to be? Here are even more thoughts. Just before the final battle, Layla learned that Marc was at the scene of her father's death, but he hid it from her. Now that Marc is supposedly free from Khonshu, will Layla finally be able to forgive him and continue with their marriage? So many questions. Hopefully season 2 will come and bring answers with it. In other news, the Moon Knight comic series, the book is set to release number 3 come July 20th, 2022. Moon Knight Black, White, and Blood number 2 was released in June 2022. Moon Knight's relationship with Khonshu has varied over the years, with the ancient god suggested as everything from ally to abuser to a symptom of mental illness. However, the comic character Marc, or Moon Knight, at the end of number 2, decided to sever ties with his master Khonshu, and in the wake of his separation, he begins to see that his decision may cost him more than he expected. Moon Knight's dark future confirms the twisted cost of escaping Khonshu. Moon Knight was mentally drained from the ever-vengeful and demanding voice of Khonshu in his head. He decides he has had enough, and after spending a rather disturbing day with his alters Steven and Jake, he turns to Doctor Strange for help. Marc uses a mystic scarab to break his bond with Khonshu. He is left in a catatonic state afterward, but declares he was happy to finally enjoy the quiet. And that's a wrap. Everything you need to know about what other fans of Moon Knight are saying about the concluded Season 1 and what they hope to see in Season 2. Be sure to let us know your thoughts on Moon Knight Season 1, your favorite characters, and what you'd like Season 2 to be like. Until next time, thanks for watching.